What's happening, guys? Classic Chris here, and I got an exciting topic for this week's episode. We're talking Finn Balor and him getting called up to the main roster. Okay, so the current NXT champion was recently interviewed on the Sam Roberts Wrestling podcast, and during that podcast, he was asked if he wanted to get called up to the main roster, and this is what Finn Balor had to say. In my opinion, I agree with Finn Balor. He does some very good points in this. What he says, I'm going to read it out right now, actually, but his views, I agree with Finn Balor. I agree with him, and this is what Finn Balor had to say. And here it is. I really believe that what we're doing here in the WWE Performance Center and what we're doing with NXT is something that's going to be remembered for years. I feel like getting quote unquote called up to the main roster would be maybe like a step back for my career right now. Obviously, instant gratification. You get called up to the main roster, that's great. But I think what we're doing here in NXT will stand longer in history as kind of like a revolutionary period and kind of pull myself out of what would be what would be damaging to his long-term career, detrimental to my long-term career. Using big words there, Finn Balor. Awesome job. But I kind of agree with them. Like Finn Balor believes that if he was called up to the main roster, it'd be a step back in his career. And can you blame the guy for everything that's been going on with NXT? The fans are more responsive in NXT than they are to the quote-unquote main roster. The shows are getting a lot more positive feedback than, let's say, Monday Night Raw. Just the talent in NXT. Like, I'd rather see Samoa Joe fight Finn Balor 1,000 times than I see any more Sheamus versus Roman Reigns. Because we also watched that TakeOver show, and Finn Balor and Samoa Joe put on a great match. There's more. It seems like the wrestlers care more in NXT to make a name for themselves. It's got that indie feel, and I really like it. And you can you blame Finn Balor for saying that? NXT's been on a roll. Fans are electric, and the NXT, and then for some of the wrestlers that get called up from the NXT, look at how they're doing now on the quote-unquote main roster. You got, for a prime example, the Ascension, a very dominant team in NXT. They are, if I'm not mistaken, if they still aren't, if they still are, they were the longest reigning tag team champions in NXT history. They were very dominant. They just destroyed teams, and they carried those belts. A lot of teams, it took them a lot to beat the Ascension to take the belts off them. And in NXT, they were a force to be reckoned with. But now when you see them on the main roster, like, they fell into obscurity. They're basically like Stardust's cronies, if they're even in his section anymore. Because I think they dropped that angle ever since Cesaro's injury, which really sucks. I miss Cesaro. But the Ascension, they just disappeared. Another NXT person that got called up to the main roster and is like just terrible on the main roster is Tyler Breeze. Tyler Breeze in NXT was a little bit entertaining. He got to fight Jushin Thunder Liger at one of the TakeOver shows, and that to me stood out for Tyler Breeze, because on the main roster, you're not going to fight someone the caliber of Jushin Thunder Liger. You're not going to fight a guy of Liger's caliber and his quality of a wrestler. So like, that's it's kind of is a step back. I agree with Finn Balor. Like, look at Kevin Owens, for example. NXT champion, huge role, comes in the main roster. Yeah, you beat John Cena your first match, but then you lost the other 8 in a row. You countlessly don't look good on the main roster. You were the Intercontinental Champion, but it was a terrible run. As soon as you got into that package with Dean Ambrose, you couldn't even beat Dean Ambrose to save your life. And I'm a big Kevin Owens fan, so it just sees how they're treating some of these guys that come up from the main roster that the fans really got behind. They're like I said before, falling into obscurity. Like it is just very weird, because these guys have so much talent. Like, look at Neville, for example. Fans love him and everything, but you're never going to see him higher than a mid card, maybe an Intercontinental Champion, but he's never going to be a WWE champion. But on NXT, he was champion. You got guys like Sami Zayn, champion. It's just, you had good wrestling. The women's division is taken more seriously than the Divas division. Like, look at all the call-ups. All the Divas that stand up are NXTers. Paige, Charlotte, Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks. Those are all NXT women that put on great matches and carried and helped to make the women's division in NXT where it is today. So, for what Finn Balor had to say, I agree with them. What they're doing at NXT, They're doing everything to help the product. They're doing everything to build up that brand of NXT. And look at guys like Ty Dillinger. He's awesome. Formerly known as Sean Spears in the Niagara territories, if anyone knows that. But Ty Dillinger, the Perfect 10 gimmick. Just some of the guys that they're signing, like Apollo Crews, great wrestler. They have so many guys like Hideo Itami. The list can go on. Sami Zayn's back in NXT. Like even some guys like Rhino. Like Rhino even fought on NXT and he's happy. Look at Samoa Joe, a prime example of how good NXT is. Samoa Joe, established wrestler all around the world. He's Prince Devitt, same. He's Finn Balor now. Just everybody that's on NXT was established somewhere else, and they're allowed to keep some of their past glory, it seems, in NXT. But when you come to the main roster, it's like starting off from scratch. I agree with what Finn Balor had to say, and kind of is a step back, because with what NXT is doing right now, he's right. It is more groundbreaking. It is going to help out that's going to stand out in the history of wrestling more than the quote unquote reality era. So I like what's going on with NXT, and I agree with Finn Balor. So what do you guys think? Leave a comment, like, subscribe. I would love to hear what you guys think about Finn Balor and him getting called up to the main roster. I think it'd be the best thing for the main roster to have a guy like Finn Balor, but I like where he is on NXT. He's the champ. He's in high-profile matches, and that's the way it should be. I'm Classic Chris, and I'm going to wrap things up there. You guys have a good one.